open it up and see.
All right.
Hi!
Good morning. Good morning. How are we?
I don't believe it.
Here. Now look here, where were you last night?
Me? Why,
Answer yes or no. What were you doing there?
Doing where?
Well, how do we know? Besides, I don't like your looks.
Did you ever take a good look at yourself?
Yeah. Billy!
Hey, turn that off. Will you turn that thing off?
Hold still, will ya?
Does this help?
Yeah, thanks.
Maybe you found someone you like better.
No, he's in the ambulance. This way. Oh, God. Before I open this, don't get your hopes up too high.
Well, hello. Well, all right. So today we're talking about Fright Night, one of my absolute favorite vampire flicks, and we're talking about, I have the whole box set here, but we're talking about the very first Nightmare on Elm Street, and I absolutely love that movie poster. I watched this on the DVD. I do own the Blu-ray, but man, I have this this Nightmare on Elm Street box set, and it's ridiculous because I spent a lot of time. I made a YouTube short, and I spent tons of time. I did editing. I made it like a little fancy. I even added some music. Nobody even watched this short. I do a dumb short, and like everyone watches it. So it's just, I have the box set, so I brought it out. I've been watching it, and I did watch that this DVD today, and I really enjoyed it. But I do like I like the packaging of this one so much better, and I do obviously love that movie poster. But
yeah, it's way better. It's way better than this thing.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, there is a thing with horror movies that I will gladly watch the VHS, gladly watch the DVD, and I don't care about the Blu-ray or the 4K. Now, there are movies that I have bought the Blu-rays and the 4K, so don't get me wrong. I do like having the superior format, but there are so many movies like this where I'll double dip. I'll have the DVD, I'll have the VHS. I'm glad to watch it in here on the old tube TV, and I'm just, for me, a little bit of that film grain, a little bit of that fuzzy picture, it just kind of still works with a horror movie always.
Sure.
Yeah. But before we get into the movies, though, because I mean we got a lot of ground to cover with that. But hello, chat. Hello, anybody that's watching. And we have, as always, today's Monday, so tomorrow's Tuesday. Tuesday's new release day. There's a few new releases we're going to cover before we dive into the movies here. And we have, let's see, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Is that tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow.
Oh, wow,
Batman
already.
Mask of the Phantasm 4K is going to be tomorrow. The Walking Dead, Dead City Season 1, Joyride. Now, this is the, not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of the horror movie. This is, there's 4 girls on the cover, and it's a blue and pink cover. I've never seen that one. So that'll be out tomorrow.
Sounds great to me.
Sounds fair to me. Yeah, it's looks like it's a rated R comedy, probably for girls.
Okay.
Air, I'm assuming that's the Air Jordan story there. Great cast, probably a wonderful biopic. I just haven't really been getting into those biopics. For me, that's something I'd watch on late night television if there was nothing to watch. But I don't do the late night TV thing anymore. Just sticking to my physical media. So it's something I'd probably pick up if it's on sale, it's in the $5 bin. Kind of that would be for me, I guess.
Sure.
Let's see. Last House on the Left. That will be here tomorrow. So what I did was I waited till the very last day of the Arrow video sale at Barnes & Noble's. And I went on the website. I ordered The Last House on the Left and 2 other titles that I had wanted for a while. Got them half off. Great deal. And I just got the email that they will be here tomorrow. And I'm like, where's my package this whole entire time? Not realizing that Last House on the Left actually gets released tomorrow. But I already got the email thing that it'll be here. FedEx will be dropping it off tomorrow. So looking forward to that one. Because it's a movie I haven't seen in quite a while. And having the Arrow video release, I can't wait. So yes, that one definitely comes out tomorrow, and obviously it's a day one purchase for me because it's already in the mail.
Yeah.
We have Poker Face Season 1, Kick-Ass 2 on 4K. Now, it's a movie. I don't even have that in the collection at all. I have the first one on 4K. This one I'll be picking up, but I don't need it day one. Like I said, I just picked up a whole bunch of other ones. I don't need to go out tomorrow and get anything, but I say that every week, and I tend to go out anyway.
Yeah.
Shrek the Third is on 4K. Again, it's one I don't really need. Kiss the Girls is on 4K. Now, that's a Kino Lorber release. I absolutely love Kiss the Girls. I have it on VHS. I have it on Blu-ray. I don't necessarily know if I need to upgrade it. It's been a while since I've seen it because obviously my 6-year-old and like some of those movies are a little harder to watch. In the time frame. And again, when they go to sleep, it's either we're doing a show like this or I'm watching something else. So I do enjoy the movie. The 4K is something I would love to get and I'd like to pick up. I don't know. I'm definitely not picking it up tomorrow. It just depends. Like if I happen to be out Blu-ray hunting and I just see it on the shelf, I might take it home. But like I said, I own 2 copies of it already, and I don't know the last time I even watched it.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that like completely slipped through my net, man. I've never seen Kiss the Girls.
I highly recommend it, and definitely if the 4K is coming out, I recommend grabbing that one.
Okay.
It's probably worth watching, especially as a Kino Lorber release. I usually have never any problems with them. They do great.
Of course.
Obviously expecting, I have high expectations out of Kino Lorber.
Yeah.
So then we got that one. Then we have Walkabout 4K, Ghoulies on 4K. Now, this is one that I have this already in my Amazon wish list. It's something I'll be getting eventually. It's right now the price is $33. So, but you're getting, I think you're just getting the first one, right? Yeah. So Ghoulies 4K MVD. It's $33. That's a bit pricey for me. I do enjoy it.
A little bit.
Something I'll probably pick up, but I'm going to be waiting for that one to come down a little bit in price.
I'm more of a Critters man.
I do enjoy it. Yeah, Critters is excellent. And I'm debating whether or not to pick up that Critters pack or wait till we get a 4K. I don't know.
Sure.
I want it. I don't have it in the collection. And the last time I was at the used bookstore, I actually had it in my hand. It was the DVD 4-pack. It had 4 movies and 1 DVD set. I almost picked it up, and I was like, you know what? I want that Blu-ray set. And then as I go home, I was going to order the Blu-ray set, and I'm like, but maybe they'll come out with a 4K set. So I have that dilemma. I'm probably going to go back to the used bookstore and see if they have it, and I'll probably just pick up that one cheap, wait for the 4K to come out. But that Blu-ray set's not bad. It's only like $30 on Amazon.
Yeah, it's great. I've had it for a couple of years now. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely, for if you're having it for a couple of years, it's totally worth it. But I'm probably gonna get that DVD. I'm gonna wait on that one. But we do have, so Ghoulies is coming out. I'm excited about that one. I'm looking forward to it. But again, I love it, but I don't know if I love it $34 worth.
Yeah,
it's $33.99. But then we have, let's see. Okay, my page jumped. I messed up everything. All right, so here we go. September 12th. So we have Walkabout Ghoulies. The Postman Fights Back, and which I don't know what that is, and then Smile 4K Steelbook. Now I didn't hate Smile, but I wasn't a huge fan of it. It was not my favorite horror movie.
It's what my wife really enjoyed it, and but she's not as obsessive when it comes to collecting as I am. She's fine with the Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray transfer itself looked really good. I can't imagine like there being a huge step up to 4K.
No, I can't either. But so I know I'm not getting anything else. I got that one in the mail tomorrow. I'm not going to be rushing out to get any of these because already I'm waiting next week. We're getting Exorcist on 4K. So that's the one I'm waiting for. I did have that big expensive steelbook on my Amazon there. It's still, I think the cheapest it went down was $89. I don't think that's an $89 or $100 movie for the steelbook and all that collector that comes with. So I'm probably going to cancel my Amazon and just go get the standard edition, even though I don't love that standard edition cover. I don't love it. I love what England got. I thought that was pretty sharp. Some of the other places that get Blu-ray movies, I thought they got way better covers. So I'm just I'm looking forward to hunting for this one, so I do have to remember to cancel my Amazon, and I'm going to go out next Tuesday for Exorcist. So that's it. That's was there anything on this list that you need? Maybe not this week, but do you need it all?
I mean, look, you kind of sold me on Kiss the Girls, so I'll look into that later on after we're done recording. But no, man, same thing. Like I've got Picard season 3 in the mail, so that'll be here soon. And past that, like I'm kind of on lockdown until that B5 set and that Farscape set comes out, because that's basically going to kill my wallet.
Oh yeah,
So,
I'm sure. And speaking of kill your wallet, I didn't want to talk
Yeah.
about this today, but you mentioned it and just kind of just dug in the knife a little bit. So
okay.
I don't want to go into crazy detail about it, but while we're
Mhm.
here, and it's just us, because obviously no one's watching right now,
Yeah.
but they might eventually. That $1,500 Disney set. Now, I
Yes, okay.
have thoughts about this. And like one, I don't think it's an attractive set. I'm not a huge fan of the way it is. It's kind of cool how it opens up as a book to display and it just kind of sits there angled. It's a decent design in that factor, but most people don't have the room to set that up on their shelf like that. Then the dust factor is just ludicrous. But as you look into it, there's 100 films in this set. So at the $1,500 price tag, when you add it up, you're like, oh, that's about $15 a movie, right? Right around there.
Right.
You're getting all these
Right.
like extra things. There's like a Mickey thing, some extra stuff. But that plain boring white is ridiculous. It says it's 100 celebrating 100 years of Disney. Not every movie in there is a Disney movie. You got a bunch of the Pixar stuff. And which I think the whole thing is ludicrous because you have that giant Disney back catalog of live action stuff that should have been in there. There's a ton of movies. Now, I know they have moved a bunch to Blu-ray, but there's a ton of movies that have never got moved to Blu-ray. And this is something I feel that they should have already been working on. And there should have been a ton of awesome releases, things that have never been to Blu-ray, and make this set special. Now, $1,500 is way too much money for that. But it would have definitely been fair between $500 and $700 in that range. Still very, very pricey, but you'd have a lot more people wanting to get it. And especially if you had put in movies that have never been put on Blu-ray. Every single movie, I believe, when I look down that list, either I have almost all those ones that I love, and then there's obviously a lot of those new Pixar ones that I just could care less about. But at some factor, you can get every single one of those movies on Blu-ray that they're putting in this disc. So it's just repackaging something they've already done. Nothing about this feels special. It feels like a giant cash grab. And I think the whole design of that book is ugly. And they're in those sleeves. So you take them out, you risk the chance of scratching all the discs. I'm not a big fan of this, but I don't hate Disney. I'm not I'm not one of those guys that's constantly like, screw Disney, pitchforks and burning it all down. Like, I'm not one of those guys because I'm still a fan, but I think it's a missed opportunity and I'm a little frustrated by it.
I mean, 100% it's a cash grab, man. Like you look at all the moves that they're making, getting back into physical media after, Disney Plus is on like tanking as bad as it is. Like they're losing millions of subs a month. Like this is 100% a cash grab. And
oh yeah,
I agree with you that, well, okay. Number one, okay, 100 movies, granted, is a lot of movies, but no way is it worth basically the cost of a mortgage payment. It's just not. No matter how they package it. But on top of that, to your point, no, like I think they needed to be intellectually honest with this. And if you're going to say 100 years of Disney, it has to be 100 years of Disney. You can't pick and choose like, well, we're going to take some Pixar and leave out, like we were saying before the show, like leave out stuff like Fox and that whole catalog that they've absorbed. Like there are so many movies that either aren't available at all or are only available through the Disney Movie Club. And this was kind of an opportunity to do like a grand spectacle and just roll them out to the general public, or at least the general collecting public for the first time.
Yeah, even if they
it's all
didn't
missed.
you're right. Even if they didn't remaster a whole bunch of movies, which, when you look at a lot of the Disney remasters and stuff, most of them is just direct transfer. So they take the DVD quality, just slap it on a Blu-ray, call it a day. They've done that quite a bit with some of the 4Ks too. So they're not opposed to doing that, but just set aside remasters altogether. But there's, like you said, a ton of Disney Movie Club exclusives that are not available to the major public that would have been great to put in this set and then offer it up at the $1,500 price tag is absolutely ludicrous too.
Yeah.
And I think they're trying to gouge collectors. There are people that are going to rush out and buy it. There are people that have the money that are going to buy this just to say they have it. Then you also have the scalpers that are going to buy this to throw it up on eBay and try to charge $3,000 for it. But the average movie collector already has all these films anyway.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so who are they really gouging? They're gouging the mom or the Disney fan or the kid that really, really wanted something like that, just a cool keepsake, something awesome. You know, because
Right.
there are people in this world that aren't like us, that don't have a million movies, but they have something special like that, and that means the world to
Mhm.
them. So that price tag is absolutely ludicrous. But you're right,
Right.
not putting things like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids or any of those like the Goofy movies. Those Goofy movies never got to Blu-ray. They're on the Disney Movie Club exclusive. I know because I have them. The
Yeah.
Herbie the Love Bugs would have been perfect. So you have there's a ton of Disney movie exclusives that are on Blu-ray. Like you said, they're not available to the general public, and it would have been
Yeah.
great, just an easy put in there. And at that point, the whole thing wouldn't have felt like a cash grab. It would have made people feel a little bit easier. And again, I think the $1,500 price tag is ludicrous, even though I've spent stupid money on other things. I might have thought about getting it if it had those other titles. You know,
Yeah, I think the cap out needs to be 800, 1,000 at most. But asking double that, like
for
$1,600.
100 movies and the tchotchkes, I think like in the $900 to $1,000 price range. I still think it's high, but I think
Yeah.
that would have been a more reasonable price because now
Yeah.
you're thinking, oh, it's $10 a movie, but this all the collector set. You see the value there. At $1,500, I don't see the value at $1,500. I just
No, I don't. And it's like, again, to your point, like what's the likelihood that you already own like 25 to 30% of those movies? Like pretty high.
I own every single one of them except for those newer Pixar ones.
Right.
Like the
And
last three, I didn't own those. All the rest I do.
like even like if you're a serious collector like me and you don't want to go in for like the Disney Movie Club, you've probably picked some of that stuff up just through like eBay. Like, I'm not a member of the movie club, but I have the Black Cauldron, the Black
Oh, it's
Hole,
amazing.
Return to Oz. Like
Yeah.
I have all those. So it's like, nah, Disney, I'm good, man.
Right. Yeah. So that's the thing. So I'm not mad at it. I think it's a missed opportunity and it's unfortunate. But I am curious to see who gets this thing to review, the review copy YouTubers. I'm curious to see that because I'm curious to see the positivity that comes from it. Because just looking at it as from a collector standpoint who loves this stuff, I'm looking at this old Freddy box set here.
Yeah.
And like this is incredible. You're not even getting anything close to that out of something that's worth $1,500. They're charging $1,500 for Disney. I don't know. It's not for me.
Yeah,
But
man. Yeah, and
those are my
speaking
quick
of,
thoughts on it. Those are your thoughts. I'm not
Right.
in. I'm not thrilled, but I'm like I think it's like a knife wound, like a
it totally is.
salt on the wound kind of thing. Especially after they took away physical media out of Australia. You know,
Right,
because obviously
exactly.
Australia you can't even buy this thing.
Yeah.
It's one of those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
And speaking of that nightmare set, man, like I'm considering hunting down a copy of that and like swapping
Do
out
it.
the
Now is the
DVDs
best
with
time,
all these.
bro. Now is
Yeah.
the best time to get this because when I found this at the thrift store. I think I paid like $10 for this, maybe less. It was not a lot of money for this. But
Yeah.
when I found it, this was still $100 or more on eBay. Recently, I've looked it up and it's in the $20, $25 price range because what happens on eBay after a while, if everybody puts it on there, eventually they start going lower and lower and lower until all of a sudden it's rock bottom. And right
Right.
now there's a ton of these for about $25. But
Yeah.
just a few years ago, this was $100 or more easy. And so I was over the moon when I saw this sitting on the shelf at the thrift store.
Yeah, man. Because I can't stand, like, as an artist and as a graphic designer, I hate this.
Yeah.
It-
It's horrible. It's horrible. Yeah, not a fan. But before we go any further, let's talk about what we're here to talk about tonight: Nightmare on Elm Street and Fright Night.
Yes.
So these are two of my absolute favorite films. Now, Fright Night, this one here, this is what I think we should start with this one because it's the one I have in my hand.
Yeah.
But Fright Night, one, I absolutely love that artwork on that movie poster. I don't know who actually did this one. I don't know if it was Drew Struzan. He did a ton of movies at this time. It could have been him. I never bothered to look it up, so that's my bad. But it's one I enjoyed. But I have seen different versions of this cover. I've seen the movie poster, and they're not enjoyable at all. And I just what I had pulled up here. Let's see. Before we do that, let's see. Is this the Fright Night stuff? Yeah, that's the Fright Night stuff. Okay, Fright Night. So I have these pictures from the movie. I took the stills, but as I did that, I took share this. Let's see. Here we go. Let's close this out. So how does this work? There we go. Right
There you go.
So this is the original movie poster. Absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. It's the first thing I ever saw. It pulled me in. I remember my mom rented this. I don't know exactly how old I was because the movie came out in 1985. So when the movie came out, I was 3. So I obviously didn't see it then, but I did see the thing around that time. But this one, I was a little bit older because I know that the opening scene, you see the lady when she takes off her bra, and you see that in the very beginning. And I know that's something my mom at the time would not have wanted me to see. So I went to try to tell her because she rented the movie for me. I went to be like a good little boy and tell her, that maybe this movie's not for me. And she shushed me off. She fluffed me off because she was on the phone. And I was like, but they're carrying a coffin and there's a naked lady. And like, she just shushed me off. So I watched this entire movie at a little bit younger age than maybe I should have. And man, is it one of my favorites. So it's not only the first like vampire film that I really saw, the first like true horror. I mean, I saw bits and pieces of The Thing, and I saw bits and pieces of other horror movies at that time earlier. But this is like the first one I sat down from beginning to end and I got to really enjoy. This is to this day is probably one of my absolute favorite vampire flicks. I just thought everything about it there was definitely like Hollywood magic in this movie. And I was not familiar with all that came before it, right? I was not familiar with anything Hammer horror. Obviously the character in here, Peter Vincent, is based off of Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. So he was named after those two characters. So I wasn't even familiar with all the stuff that came before to create this. And then you have the stories, basically The Boy Who Cried Wolf, right? The Boy Who Cried Vampire. But then at the same time, you have Rear Window tied into this. Another one of my all-time favorite movies. So I saw all this before all the cool things that influenced this that I found later. And to this day, it's one of my absolute favorites that I watch every October.
Yeah. Same here, man. And similar origin story, so to speak. This was one of the first VHS tapes I ever owned when I was a kid, and it must have been 87, 88 maybe. I'm assuming my dad got it for me. I can't picture my mom buying this willingly for me.
Oh wow.
And yeah, just like it was that thing. Like I watched it every day. Usually when I knew my mom wasn't around, and just influenced so much of me, like as a storyteller and as a horror fan. Like I love this film so much. And yeah, like I was saying earlier, like I got notes. We'll get into it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, so when I pointed out the movie poster on this and why I love this so much is when we go to the very next version of the movie poster that I ever saw, I can't stand it. Now, this I think is incredible. You have all the detail in the ghost here. You have all the images from the movie. It's just wonderful. But then we go over here. Nothing about this is appealing. Now, there is something about this, like finding a lot of the stuff later, that it does feel a little Hammer horror-ish, movie poster-ish, not exactly. It has that kind of vibe, but not quite. But still, this does not suck me in. If I ever saw this on the video rental store on the wall, I might if I was like in that horror mood, I might have picked it up. But like I know that this is not what it is. Doesn't appeal to me. I like the painted movie posters, and this to me is just so much going on and just junk. And so as a design perspective, I'm just not a fan. Never have been.
No, it doesn't work at all. I mean, first off, you've got Jerry on there twice technically. That breaks it for me a little bit. And just in terms of design, it almost feels like
You have Evil
Yeah.
Ed, and then you have the wolf.
Yeah, you're right. And then I don't know, like it feels almost like a precursor to the thing that they make fun of in the opening of The Mist, because the character in that's a painter, and he's like, they do it in Hollywood all the time. It's just two big heads, because
Yeah.
he was complaining about movie posters. This just seems like the primordial version of that before it became common practice.
Oh, for sure. No, and so I do agree with you. I think it's the same thing. It's very frustrating, and the big head's not a fan. But this here, I saw this and I was just like, I don't even understand. I don't understand. So I'm glad to own this version of it with that original movie poster, and so I'm glad to have that one. But yeah, I was not a fan. But as we go in, let's go to the very beginning. Let's see. So this is right here. So this is the kind of the opening. And so we have this, and this scene here is your Rear Window scene. So he's in his room. He's trying to get with his girlfriend, who's played by Amanda Bierce, who, by the way, before we even go any further, this is one of my favorite autographs right here. I do have Amanda Bierce in this movie from this scene during her transformation. And this is a double photo. So we have before she transforms, when she pops her teeth, and then the monster. So I absolutely love this. And this to me was a callback, and it got the big heads in here, but this felt more like a callback, like to the older Hollywood movie monsters.
Right. I get that. Yeah.
But yeah, so I really do enjoy having that autograph. But in this here, so he's trying to get with her. There's a little, obviously, sexual frustration. Like even the line he says is, we've been going together for so long, and all you ever say is "get off me" or "no" or whatever he says.
Right.
So he's rejected by the girl, and now he's out the window spying on the neighbors, and so you have that Rear Window aspect, and I absolutely love it because that's another one of my absolute favorite films. But this one is where it just sucks you in. If you weren't already like buckled in for this ride, you now see Jerry and what's the other guy's name? You see his familiar carrying the casket, and so you're just like, what's going on? And
Billy.
Billy. Okay, there you go. But yeah, so in this, like, I mean, I remember this movie poster. I remember picking this up when I was a kid at the video store and just wanted to rent this, and I rented it. But I didn't know it was a vampire film. Like, I mean, I really didn't. Like, I almost thought it was like a ghost story kind of thing. And so I was a little kid when I saw this. And so if you don't know this is a vampire film, you're locked and loaded because they're carrying a casket. You already get it. There's vampires involved. And then shortly after that, he's trying to tell everybody. Nobody believes him. So now you have this entire story, and that's what it's based off of. That's what Tom Holland tried to sell this, because Tom Holland wrote and directed this one as the boy who cried wolf, boy who cried vampire. That was the whole story, and it didn't work, and nobody was really buying it until he had added the Vincent Price character, which ended up being Peter Vincent.
Yeah, man. So, quick thoughts, like, on the opening. So, they're watching Fright Night with Peter Vincent and one of his old movies while they're making out, and right from the beginning, like the movie within the movie sets the tone for what this whole thing's going to be, because it lets you know it's going to be somewhat serious, but with a slight comical take. Because the first thing you see besides them making out is Peter Vincent like about to stake a vampire, and the stake is backwards, and he just charges in, and you're like, okay, I get it. And then regarding them, as a couple, like, this is a great example of like an honest look at teenage couples. Charlie wants to get some, driven by hormones. Amy's nervous. Number one, this would never be depicted today in film.
No.
And when the funny thing that makes it so true to life is when he finally gets it almost literally tossed in his face, he's too oblivious to notice, because now we're in Rear Window territory.
Oh yeah, he's completely lost into what's going on outside. She wants him, and she's, and yeah, it's kind of hilarious because I remember being that age, and that's all I ever thought of. But I can tell you, if I saw two guys carrying a casket in the middle of the night, I would have been out that window just the same. And so I really relate to that on so many levels.
And regarding the casket, so again, I've seen this movie like I don't know how many times. So what's great about the casket is that's like your first example of great visual storytelling because
Oh yeah.
what's his name? Billy, the
It's something.
familiar, Billy is like struggling to like keep his end held up, right?
Mhm.
And meanwhile, the Jerry, he's just holding it with one hand and it's no effort at all.
Oh yeah. No, it's amazing how those little nuances, they're just really enjoyable to notice in these older films.
Yeah.
Because I know as a kid I probably didn't catch that part at first. Because it's something I've noticed over the years watching this film. I've noticed it then, but like somehow or other, I probably just was in awe over seeing the casket because growing up, like you just see boring plain caskets even on TV. This was a really intricate design one. It was interesting.
It was.
It had like it was carved. It was just a cool looking casket. And so it's
Yeah,
something that just kind of sticks in your memory.
absolutely, man.
Let's see.
And yeah, like the casket design and just you're right, like the pacing of it like just sucks you in from the beginning, and then like of course like he gets rejected, but then he rejects her because he's oblivious, and so like then the argument spills out downstairs, and we get introduced to the mom,
Mhm.
and she kind of knows what's going on, but even she's kind of oblivious to the overall thing.
Mhm.
It's
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know, man. I just like how it sets the pace for everyone's oblivious to each other, but especially to his world and what he's experiencing. So it sets
Yes.
up the boy who cried wolf thing perfectly.
Oh, it really does. And so, yeah, like everything about this, I think it not only does it hit all the right notes for me. Um,
Hmm.
I would argue though that there is an argument that there's no perfect movie, right? But for
Right.
me, this is a perfect film. Like,
Hmm.
there's no part about it that I want to change. And every time I watch it, I think it gets better and better. And I've always
Yeah.
loved it from the very beginning. This is not one that's grown on me. I've loved it from the very beginning. And every time I watch it, I love it more. So for me, I personally think this is a perfect film.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree, man.
And then, so then we have this scene. So as he's trying to spy and find out what's going on, and he goes to check out the very next morning. He goes to check out the basement. So he's going through. So we have Billy. That's his name, right? Billy.
Yeah, Billy.
Okay. So Billy is down there and he's painting the windows black. And so again, you even if you haven't seen the movie, you have no idea. Somehow you put this in and you have no idea it's a vampire film. You're watching this because again, I go back to being a kid and still thinking it was a ghost story. And
Hmm.
you see him. So the visual storytelling, he's painting the windows black. They carried the casket downstairs. They're painting the basement windows black. So then obviously no sunlight comes in. It's just a great thing of visual storytelling. There's no conversation about it. There's no point does Jerry tell Billy to do it. There's no talk of it. It just kind of happens, and it's just I absolutely love the show me, don't tell me. But then as Brewster's going to check out the basement and see what's going on in there. Billy was painting the windows and he runs up. And now I love this part too, because there's been times where I watch this and I'm like, it just seems a weird part, like where he just jumps out of nowhere. And so when
Hmm.
he jumps out of nowhere and he like kind of pops out of the corner, you have to realize he was in the basement. So he ran all the way upstairs, ran out the front door to then yell at him to stop him at the last minute. So it
Right.
actually works. Like his weird jumping out and like the little bit of heavy breathing he does, it works if you have to realize that he ran the whole way from the basement. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And what I dig about I have no idea what the actor's name is, but like what I dig about Billy's performance is he plays the whole familiar thing perfectly. Like
Mhm.
he plays it as a character that doesn't have that much power. Like he's nowhere near as perfect as powerful as Jerry, but he
Right.
knows that he's more powerful than the average human. So he
Mhm.
knows he can get away with being intimidating towards this punk kid trying to look into the cellar doors.
Oh, sure, sure. And then no, there's that aspect of it, but then you have that thing of like sometimes it's hard to gauge in some of these older movies like how old these kids are, but this was a high schooler. This is a kid that was in
Yeah.
high school. He was not an adult. And so you have to
Yeah.
think back then, no matter what, when you're a kid, any adult says anything, even if you could probably fight them,
Yeah.
you're going to be intimidated. You're going to listen. There's going to be that. There was a difference back in the 80s and 90s of the whole respect your elders thing. It was there. And
Yeah.
so if any guy, even if I could have put that guy right on his rear, I would have probably had that same reaction of, oh, I better listen. And one, two, I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm trying to break into his basement. You know?
Right.
It
Just
wouldn't have stopped my
constantly-
curiosity though.
Oh, of course not, man. Of course. And it doesn't stop his.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just constantly like needling him, calling him kid.
Mhm.
Like it's such a great performance, man. This dude's great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was really fun to revisit this again. And like I said, I watch it every Halloween, but watching it earlier, well, not Halloween, but every October, watching it earlier for this show was just so much fun because now I know I'm going to watch it again very soon.
Yeah,
And a lot of times when I watch this, my wife's around, I have to worry about the kids. There's a lot of pauses. There's a lot of, maybe I want to watch this. Maybe I'm distracted while I'm watching this, but I got to watch this from beginning to end, no distractions, and it was just a really, really enjoyable experience. Like, because I haven't got to sit down and enjoy it at that level in many years. And this, that's why I said I noticed this part. And again, I remember when I was a kid, it didn't dawn on me that he ran out of the basement.
Yeah, that's good.
Then it leads us into this part here. Oh, it's got messed up. I don't know how this got messed up. Probably because they're labeled. They're probably labeled different things. So this is in the beginning. So this is what he was spying on. And this was the very first thing I ever saw. This is probably the first naked movie scene I ever saw. Probably.
Yep.
And for me, it was just being a young boy. I was in my glory. Even though I tried to tell my mom that's probably not a movie that she'd want me to watch anyway. So I tried to tell on myself, but it worked out where she, fluffed me off and I got to watch this. And again, that has always stuck in my head forever. Not only do I not, that scene is really burned into my image image is burned into my brain. But every time it shows up on film, the whole scene is very enjoyable because I feel like it's like a callback to so many other movies that came before. But again, at the time when I saw this, I didn't notice that. The scene just sucked me in, and I just had no idea why.
Oh,
Obviously,
dude, so
naked, but
yeah. I mean, number one, like 8-year-old Mike greatly appreciated this, but,
right? Yeah,
but yeah, man. So like the infamous boob scene, like studying it this time around, it really is a masterclass in composition and blocking. Not to get like too technical or film nerd on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow you.
Okay, so like you have the window itself, which is cross shaped. So that immediately divides the image into like 4 equal parts. And like everything from like her face to his face to the boobs to the string that
I know what
like,
you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Like all of that, every single part of the shot is like perfectly blocked out and works as its own image. And
thank you.
Then it ends with like the zoom in on the fingers, and it just like the zoom in on the fingers as he draws the blinds like completely ties a bow around this entire scene compositionally. Like it's beautiful to watch.
Well, and that's the part where I realized. So I was thinking, right? I said because the movie poster, I was thinking we're getting to a ghost story, but then I thought this was like a multitude of things. Like obviously you see the casket, you just assume vampire, right? But then I thought like other monsters, like I didn't know what Billy was, which Dan, thank you, Dan. He mentioned that Jonathan Stark was the
Jonathan Stark. There you go.
But then as you do all this, then he like pulls the blinds down. He has those like ridiculously long fingers and the fingernails. All right, you're 100% at this is 100% a vampire movie. But I was thinking like we were getting like werewolves and like we're and I get that we're going to touch on that in a little bit later. But I was thinking like the big giant werewolf like we're used to, like from The Howling, like that type. I thought we were getting into like monster territory.
Right.
But this is just solely a vampire film. It goes with all like the traditional lore, and I just love it. I absolutely do.
Yeah, man. And like, so there is this, like, besides the rear window element, there is also this, like, forbidden fruit element to it. Cause, like, he's watching this, like, intimate act that he shouldn't be watching. And so, yeah, like, great cut here. So, tying that whole forbidden fruit thing together, like, Jerry literally throws an apple at him. I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, it's so good and well written.
Oh, I thought it was too. And speaking of well written, do you know that this only took 3 weeks to write?
No, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he hammered out in 3 weeks. So Tom Holland, which is something I absolutely miss. So this is not
Mhm.
Tom Holland, the Spider-Man guy. This is Tom Holland. He wrote this and he directed it, and he only directed it out of defense for the movie. Like people didn't think it was going to work. Like
Mhm.
he was trying to get people to do it for him, and people weren't into it. And so, out of defense for the whole project, he decided to direct it, which I thought was
Right.
just great because as um, as the whole movie goes, like I love that writer director vision on film, and you
Yeah.
don't always get that, and it doesn't always work. There is definitely
Mhm.
plenty of writer directors that aren't that great. There's definitely plenty of actors that decide to direct that aren't that great, but there's so many winners that do. And when they do,
Right.
it's noticeable. And you have that. You don't have that argument. You don't have that change. Like obviously, if something's written down and it doesn't work visually any kind
Mhm.
of way, then maybe you have
Mhm.
to change it on the fly. However, if you stick to your guns and to go off topic
Oh,
a
thank
tiny
you,
bit,
Clark.
to go off topic
Thank
a
you.
tiny bit, the Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is a phenomenal movie. That one, they were trying to add in a whole bunch of CGI and not practical effects, but then he stuck to his guns and said, "That's it. That's all we're doing." Everybody got fired. Everybody that wanted to do CGI kept saying CGI. He fired them, and
Yeah.
he ended up getting all that movie. That entire movie is practical effects, and so we have all this now. I never looked up what was in this one as far as practical effects or CGI, but it looked like it was all practical effects, and anything that wasn't practical looked like it
Mhm.
might have been painted on. I
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
wrong on
definitely.
that. I've never done the research, but I feel that that's the way it was. There's that. So it just kind of like again, it works when you stick to your guns, and that was kind of
Mhm.
why I went on that little bit of a tangent. So.
Yeah, sorry for ducking out, by the way.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine. I'm talking to the audience and you. So when you're
Yeah,
not listening, the audience might be,
they might be.
might be.
It
But
happens on
yeah,
occasion.
so I did like this scene, and as it was, the only thing that when I was a kid, I was just like, how do you not see him? He's in the bushes, like, and you're 5 feet
Yeah,
away,
yeah.
like, because he turns around, he's supposed to be a vampire, so you're just raised and grown up like vampires have that like eagle vision. They know everything, they can sense stuff, they can smell
Mhm.
blood. Like there's that, remember all those like Hammer horror films that they'll show like the neck and they'll show the vein and all of a sudden it'll be like throbbing. And so
Right,
they smell blood. So how does he turns around and he just kind of like looks and then he goes, "Oh, there he is."
right, right, yeah.
To me, I was a kid and I was just like, what is going on? He's a
I
vampire.
mean, you should be able to see him, you should be able to hear him, you should be able to
Right.
smell
Yeah,
him.
everything. But watching it again last night, I mean, again, I watched this many times over the years. It's so enjoyable because
Mhm.
what it led to me to believe, and I don't know how they acted. I don't know the whole reason for that scene, the way it was set up. I'm not sure. But what I had noticed for myself was I took it as he was so self-absorbed, he didn't even
Mhm.
bother to notice somebody who was considered inferior.
Sure. That's true.
That's
That's
how
true.
I looked at it.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, so that scene I thought was pretty fun because it sets it up. But now this one here, this is a trope that has been played out obviously since Dracula was written, right? But then
Yep.
you have it in all the vampire movies, but not just vampire movies. There's been so many other movies that have used the same trope of like the big bad or the monster has this long lost love who's long gone, but then there's a new version of her in some form, and it's almost always the lesser main character or the main character that's not the vampire or the
Yep.
monsters love interest. And so now he's basically stealing the girlfriend of the main guy for this reason. And here is the first time I had ever seen it. And so here it worked. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was amazing. But over the years, seeing it over and over and over again, for me, it only works in a vampire movie now.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. And yeah, like this was a point I was going to bring up later, but yeah, like the revelation of the painting of Amy is where the story pivots, and it's no longer just like Rear Window by way of The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Now it's
Mhm.
just straight up uh a loose adaptation of Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and so there's something to be said about that. And it's why I love the obviously talking about it, but bringing up this picture because when you look at the entire thing, and I talk about it all the time, like I absolutely love what influenced good stories. And so you have so many things, and almost every single thing has been influenced by something else. Like, there's that idea that there's nothing new under the sun. There really
Yeah.
isn't. Everything is a derivative of something else. But when you can make it something special out of those other things that influenced it, like this, I
Yeah.
think obviously, that term that I don't like, that lightning in a bottle, or that, you struck gold, or that, any of those things, say what you will, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Because I know where the influences are, but it's only from being such a movie fan over the years. When I first
Right.
saw this was my first experience to all of it.
Oh
Like
yeah, likewise.
I didn't know the Dracula story. I didn't know any of that. Obviously, I loosely heard about The Boy Who Cried Wolf, but not realistically. Like it wasn't like ingrained into my head. And Rear Window, I didn't find it until I was a teenager. So
Yeah.
even that whole thing was just a shock to me. So this was just magical and everything about
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Now, when you saw
Like it
this,
was
were you familiar with those influences or no?
no, I mean, like, look, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, Peter and the Wolf, like I was familiar with that stuff, but like the Rear Window aspect, like completely over my head. And I think maybe I saw the Universal version of Dracula once around that age. But
Okay.
even then it didn't really sink in, like, oh, that's kind of like Amy is basically Mina, and like the
Yeah.
one-to-one comparisons, like, yeah, I was a kid, just right over my head.
Oh yeah, no, it's something. But but like I said, for me, it only works in these vampire films, and this, I think they did it very well.
Yeah.
Because again, you
Yeah,
didn't have any like explanation. It wasn't like this like giant monologue explained to the audience. You just see it.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
and again, like kind of a motif that we keep coming back to talking about these movies from the 80s, economy of storytelling. Like there's
Mhm.
so much that goes into this film that needs no explanation. Like the second you see her image, you
Mhm.
understand the entire narrative.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then so then when he sees her for the first time, then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, oh, because he has that facial expression. So then again, there's no conversation about it. He's not
Yeah.
over there telling Billy he's got to have her. You just know he's
Right.
got to have her.
Right.
It just works.
It's not like Billy's like, but that looks exactly like the painting, and wasn't that your long lost like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that would have thrown me off. I think that would have taken this movie from being perfect to being one of those like underrated cult classics, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, I guess in some aspects it is considered an underrated cult classic because until the 4K recently came out, and I think it only came out on Steelbook, which it is getting a re-release. So I know right now people
Yep.
are charging over $100 for that Steelbook. The
Yeah.
Steelbook is coming soon as a re-release. So anybody listening to this now that wants the Fright Night on 4K, don't spend the crazy money on eBay. It's going to be like $25 on the re-release, October-ish. I think it's soon, definitely very soon, because I have my eye on it. But before that came out, this was the only Blu-ray, and it was on Twilight Time, and they only made like 1,000 of these or 1,500 of these. There wasn't a lot of these films.
Mhm.
I don't even know if there's a number on this, but it's a
Yeah, I didn't
very, very
even
limited release.
I didn't even know, man. Like, if
No.
I knew that there was a Twilight Time version, I would have hunted that down before, like, this was even a thing. But yeah, man, like, I was just rocking that old DVD copy for like a decade plus, waiting for like an upgrade.
Oh wow, yeah, and that was the thing is I hadn't seen it in so long. This was the
Mhm.
first time I had it in a very long time. It was a movie I loved,
Yeah.
but before that, I remember still renting it on VHS, like as an adult. So
Mhm.
every now and again around the holidays, I just never saw this in the stores. I never saw it for sale, or it would have been a day one for me
Right.
years ago. I would have owned this on VHS. I would have had it on DVD, but I just remember around Halloween time, I would always go to the video rental store, and I was renting this on VHS well into my 20s.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So this scene here, just a great, like you were saying, it shows that he's menacing. He's not quite as powerful as Jerry, but he's definitely someone to not mess with, right? He's
Right,
got
right.
that F around and find out kind of face.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's great, man. It's great.
yeah.
And
So
this is another example of like this is another thing we tend to talk about a lot in these episodes. Like there are certain tropes that I can't stand in storytelling that for some reason in these 80s movies I'm a-okay with. And the whole thing of like you can't tell the cops because they'll think you're crazy, that whole
Mhm.
thing that's a running theme throughout this whole movie. Um I normally can't stand that, but in this I have no problem with it at all. Uh-oh. Did you freeze?
I did. Did you?
No. You're roboting a little bit. All right. I think you're good.
I think I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can
Okay.
hear you just fine now.
All right. Yeah, I don't know why we froze, but yeah, my internet's not that great. Maybe we
Yeah.
should do these not live anymore. But no,
Maybe.
I did enjoy that, and I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. But then we have our first introduction of Evil Ed.
Yeah.
And now this is great. I enjoy this friend. He just kind of had everything about him. He was the friend that growing up, like my mom would have never wanted me to have. He was the
Mhm.
friend. He was somebody that just wouldn't. My mom would not have appreciated. So like I wanted to be Evil Ed's friend.
You and
that-
you're so cool, Brewster is a line that I still use to this day with everybody.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. No, it's just great. I just love it. And I love the fact that he's at the time he might have been considered cooler because he was kind of in that punk, he dressed different, he knew about all this vampire stuff. He was different. He wasn't preppy like Brewster, right? But
Right.
looking at it, he wasn't like your typical, he wasn't bigger, he wasn't a jock, he wasn't different in that aspect. He's pretty much a nerd.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
kid, I didn't get that. As a kid, I was just like, oh, he's the cooler friend that's into the cool stuff, and he knows about vampires.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with Evil Ed that I think they left to subtext because of the time this movie was created in. And yeah, like I love Ed as a character. Like he's the ultimate 80s outcast. Like everyone always goes to Ducky whenever they
Mhm.
talk about 80s losers. I always think Evil Ed.
Now, Evil Ed's great. Well, see, I never associate him with the loser, but now I might. Thanks for that.
A little bit.
But no, I always liked it, and the fact that his name was Evil, I just enjoyed that.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
again, it's just something my mom would have hated. I think like if she came to the house, she would have prayed. Like that's the
Mhm.
kind of how my mom would have treated this guy in real life.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I absolutely love that. And then we have this scene. This scene was incredible at the time when I saw it. I had never seen anything like that. And the transition was perfect because as a kid, I didn't expect him to be there. Now, obviously, as an adult, this trope has been done a million times, especially with
course.
vampire films. Don't let him in the house. If you let him in the house, if you don't invite him in, he can't come in. Everybody knows that. They talk about all the time. He just learned that from his friend Evil Ed. He comes
Right.
home. His mom lets him in the house, and then boom, he turns around with that smile, that smirk, and it's just a perfect scene. But at
Yep.
the time I had saw it, man, I didn't expect it at all, and it just for me, it was great.
Yeah, and it's so like the only note that I wrote when I got to this part was like his mom inviting Jerry in is the ultimate damn it Janet moment in like any 80s movie.
Yes.
Because Brewster is going through so much effort to like prep the house as much as
Mhm.
he can. And then he just hears his mom be like, "Could you come downstairs?" And you know the second she's like, "Hey, come on downstairs." You're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, damn it."
Yeah, and so that night, obviously, it gets a little spookier, but then we get this. So he comes in the house at night. Brewster has nailed the windows shut so he couldn't come in. But not only does he come in, but he pulls on this full. We don't see a full form, but we get a little taste of the monster, and I
Yeah, yeah.
really enjoy that in these films. We go back to Jaws. We talk about that. One of the best things about Jaws was the monster was broken, the shark was broken, so we didn't get to really see it until the end, and so like
Mhm.
that builds up that suspense, and then we don't get a full form, but we get a taste here. Like obviously, we know he's a vampire, but this was just enjoyable here.
And there's a bit of like storytelling subversion that really works too, because the whole time that they're building up to this confrontation, you're expecting him to go straight for Brewster. and he doesn't. Like, he lets Brewster suffer, like, just get all worked up and full of anxiety,
Mhm.
and he comes in through the mom's window and just watches her sleep.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a great moment. And the thing that I noticed yesterday is, as he's leaving the mom's room to go mess with Brewster,
Mhm.
like, that he walks across the mom's mirror, which I just, for whatever reason, never registered with me. And like, they had to do the whole Terminator 2 thing of like setting up an identical set to have him open the door and then close it as he's walking out.
Yeah.
It's a
No,
great shot.
it's a great scene, and yeah, I mean, I didn't know how they did that effect, but like, it's a cool effect, and it's
Yeah.
just everything. Like I said, everything about this is enjoyable. All the little touches, the nuances, and it's just that attention to detail that I think makes this movie really great, really great.
Absolutely, man.
All right, now we have. Let's see. So this is the scene. So after all that takes place, he starts to convince his friends, or he's trying to convince his friends and everybody he knows that the neighbor is a vampire and he's got to be stopped. So they reach
Yeah.
out to Peter Vincent, which we've already talked about. So it's played by Roddy McDowall, and he is willing to help them because takes money because Amy he gives him $500. She has
Yeah.
like a $500 savings bond, gives him the money, and he quickly is like, yeah, no problem, I'll help. He does the regular water, he pretends everything, and so he's going along with this. Now, when I was a kid, his house was the coolest. His little apartment, all of his stuff, all of his things, like that idea. Because obviously, growing up in the 80s and 90s, I had my mom. The house was decorated in girl stuff, and like everyone's house was. Everyone in the neighborhood, like the moms in the neighborhood, decorated their house, and everybody just kind of lived there. And to actually see this, and not only was it cool stuff from the movies and the TV shows and the stuff that he'd been involved in, because he's an actor in a TV show, which I forgot to mention my absolute favorite part about this was that not only do we hear the title of the movie in the movie once, we hear it multiple times.
And it has different meanings each time.
Yes. And then so like the very first time we hear it is when he's doing his TV show called Fright Night.
Yep.
And so that was just an enjoyable thing. But yeah, seeing his apartment, I just thought it was really, really cool. And that was like the very first like introduction to, hey, I can have this cool stuff when I grow up. Like there was that mentality, because like in my brain, I was going to have like frilly flower blanket on my bed when I was growing up, because that's what my wife wanted. Oh no, no, my entire house is very much like this does. So
yeah,
and it's all
every time they do a new release of this movie, I'm hoping that one of the special features will be like a set designer or a production designer or somebody just walking through what every prop in this room is, because I love this whole set.
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, but then I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, that one picture here, I'm pretty sure it's Bela Lugosi. I could be wrong.
Yeah, of course.
There was definitely Bela Lugosi stuff in the scene. There was vampire stuff. There's all this great horror stuff in the background, and it was just awesome to see it. And again, like as a kid, it just blew me away. But here, he really doesn't believe at all. They don't believe, but they're willing to try to help out Brewster. And so it was great that Amy was willing. But then you think like $500. Well, how much was $500 back in the 80s? Like this movie came out in 1985. So inflation calculator, I don't know how much that would be, but that's a ton of money, especially when. But then he's so broke. And he was like, he lost his job as the Fright Night guy, and he was packing up. He's trying to hide that he's not working, kind of thing. He's broke. He's willing to take this $500 savings bond, but like unless he trades it in or cashes it in or whatever, sells it to somebody, you can't. Like you have to save those for like 18 years or something before you can cash them in.
Yeah. Like I love this introduction to Peter Vincent, because it plays on the classic trope of like the old mentor having to come out of retirement, and the way they spin it here is like he just got fired. He has no career. He doesn't believe in himself. He doesn't believe in his legacy, and it takes running into this group of kids to make him like care again about what he's doing, let alone believe in the concept that this stuff is real. Like,
oh yeah,
I just thought it was great, man.
Oh, I did too. I thought it was wonderful. And then we go to this scene. So he shows up late. He still doesn't believe, but he's kind of in a hurry. Yeah, no problem. We'll do this. And then Brewster, he's like, come on, let's get the stakes. Let's kill him. And he's like, no, you can't kill him. We have to verify that he's a vampire. And he's like, well, I verified. He goes, no, I have to verify. And it's actually a nice scene. I really enjoyed it because he still doesn't believe, but he's doing an acting role. And he's being paid to do this. And so he's playing it up. And I actually really enjoyed this because he played the part well. I thought it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. And yep, there we go.
So we get to this. So I couldn't find that picture. So the very first time that Jerry sees her and realizes she's the same woman in the painting. But this whole thing is enjoyable. And we see that, actually, maybe I did get a picture of it. No, I didn't. So we see it because then he goes in to play up the vampire thing. He grabs her hand to kiss it, which is also making Brewster a little uneasy. And everyone else is kind of uneasy. But then he cracks the joke. That's how vampires are supposed to act, right? And so then everybody in the room eases the tension. They all laugh except for Brewster, and who's maintaining his hatred and wanting to kill the vampire, the threat. And all of them just think it's a guy. Now here is where just this traditional acting, I think, played it really well for me. When the very first time I saw this, like I said, I can't remember how old I was, but I was really young when I saw this. And it was the scene coming up. So we have Peter Vincent, who I don't know if this is before or after, but this is in that same scene of the house where he gives him the holy water, which is just tap water. And so then Jerry goes to drink it, but he holds it, and I couldn't get a picture of it, but he holds the vial next to the fire. And I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why when I was a kid. I was just like, it's just kind of weird. And then he drinks it, some of it, not all. He drinks some of it, but then he was going to throw it in the fire.
Right.
And then so to me, that whole scene was weird. I didn't really understand it. Yeah.
I always took it, even as a kid, as there was some, call it ritual, call it wherever you want, where he could deconsecrate the holy water. And the real quick, the other thing that I love about Jerry, and it's exemplified in this scene the best, up until the third act, when all the cards are on the table and we know who's who and who has to do what, every line of dialogue where Jerry's interacting with someone who's not his Billy, every line of dialogue is a thinly veiled threat. Every single interaction that he has with every character, a lot of times with vampire movies, even with something like Bram Stoker's Dracula, there's kind of this love lost, the hurt monster thing. And Jerry, even with his dialogue, everything about him is he's just a predator. Even with that dialogue, it.
Well, and we're gonna get to that coming up when we go to the dance scene, because then you really see it. And so that's it's perfect. So we have that. So I can see that part. I thought maybe the same thing where the flames, maybe it was a way for him to test if it was holy water or not or whatever.
Yeah.
But why he was going to throw it back in the fire, I didn't understand that part. But again, it was maybe so it couldn't be used against him in the future. I don't know, a vial. You can get a vial anywhere. You can just put water in anything, right? So I don't know. It always kind of struck me kind of funny. But then right after that scene, we have the scene where they're walking home. Evil goes on his own way down the alley, kind of jokes that he's going to be, taken. But then we hear him screaming. He's holding his neck. They're rushing. The friends rush. So then he cries wolf. He cries vampire. And they come rushing. And then he, nothing. The whole thing was a joke. So then right after that, we have it where he, you hear him scream again because Jerry shows up. Jerry goes down the alley. He obviously bites him. He takes it. He's going to turn him. You hear the screams, and you have Amy and Brewster. They hear it, but they ignore it, and they don't care. So this was just another great scene, but it was just that reversal of now he cried wolf, or he cried vampire, and it backfired on him.
Yeah, and like just from a filmmaking standpoint, there's a lot about this that feels very Sam Raimi-ish.
Hmm.
Um and yeah, like I just the whole club scene is how I picture every club movie in my mind should be. Like
Yes.
the neon, the smoke, like every club scene should look and feel like a detective like trying to hunt down his mark, you
Hmm.
know? And
Oh,
this
for
this
sure.
film does that. This scene does that perfectly.
For sure. Now, and then I thought I had the other scene where we're pulling them in. So then evil, we don't know. We see the scene where evil's kind of in the corner. There's that.
Mhm.
We're not 100% sure what happened with him. We're not sure he's a vampire. But he could be a vampire. We don't know. He's knocking on the door. He's knocking on the door saying the vampires are out here. Let me in. And so he drags him in, and
Mhm.
he's the vampire.
Yep.
And again, as the very first time I ever saw this, it was a great scene. I really enjoyed it. But then you have that like, oh no, he's lying to you, and then you see the fangs come out. And with this, very quickly, Peter Vincent uses all of his acting and everything that he spent his entire life just living that horror monster guy, playing basically um, Van Helsing character on TV for so many years, having this stuff. He just goes and grabs the cross, sticks it to his head, burns his face, and as we see that, then we see Evil talking about the master will make you suffer for this, and so that was just really cool to see that instantly to have that connection. But then when we see the transformation as he's like hurt, he's on the ground,
Mhm.
his fangs and everything change more
Yep.
that monsterish and less like the traditional vampire that we know with the simple just fangs coming out of their normal teeth. And so now he's got these like crazy teeth as he's like
Yeah.
upset. He's yelling at Peter Vincent for what he did and scarring his face like that.
And there's this great, really subtle moment where like after he's burned, he gets back to his feet and he's feeling it, but he wants to see the damage and he
Hmm.
tries looking in the mirror, but
Yeah.
he can't see himself. So
Right, right. No, it's great. It really is. It really is. But see, here it is. And so like we see he's got the scar on his face now from the cross, but then the teeth have changed. And
yeah.
that's him just angry and upset. He's like, what did you do to me kind of thing. It always goes back to like the villain when the villain gets hurt in any kind of way in any movie, not just monster movies, they tend to go harder after the victim. They were gonna kill the
Mhm.
victim anyway. So it's
Mhm.
just like it's almost like the now you're dead kind of thing. And so he's getting angry now. This is funny.
Yep.
Always,
Yep.
always enjoyable. But then we talked about the dance scene. So the
Yep.
club. So now he clearly takes Amy away and he uses the glamour and everything, and everyone around him is just like enjoying him until the fight breaks out and then he decides to kill some bouncers. But
Yep.
when I was young, when I was watching this, I watched it a lot when I was young. This here always was boring to me, but now
Mm,
I mean, obviously it's not now.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I always dug it, man. And rewatching it again last night, if you notice up until the bouncers, come in and kind of ruin everything, and I guess Brewster, um, every time that he's walking through the crowd, they make sure to have every female extra look at him.
Hmm. Yeah, everyone
Uh,
was loving him until that point. Yeah.
yeah, it's great, man. And like her kind of snapping out of it here and there because she sees herself dancing by herself. Like
Mhm.
they're just such nuanced, great touches to this whole scene, man.
Well, there are, and like I said, I enjoy it now. But when I was younger, I just every time I was just bored with this one. I was just like, oh, they're
Okay.
dancing. It's weird.
Yeah, no, I
No,
dug
but
the
it makes
music.
sense. And like you said, the touches, the fact that like every girl was looking at him, very
Right.
interesting. And then obviously, I've always thought the coolest part was when he, takes out the bouncer. I thought that was great.
Yep. Yep.
And then here it is, like, and we see the vampire nails. And I don't know if they actually made his fingers longer, but it always looked like to me like the fingers were actually longer on top of the nails.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they did. They add another digit. So like,
yeah, it looks it
like you
looks
can
ridiculous,
yeah,
but
it does.
it's
But I
great.
love it.
It's great. I love it too. And then he grabs the bouncer. Oh, it's so awesome because
Yep.
then obviously this bouncer's like two times his size easily in real life.
Yep.
would destroy him, and just no effort with that.
Yeah, and I love how they like neither of the bouncers see it coming. Like the first
No.
one isn't intimidated by him at all. He's like move me, and like he just takes both of them out in no
Mhm.
time.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's great.
Let's see. Oh, and next we have so Evil Dead or Evil Ed. Evil Dead, silly me. Evil Ed
Close enough.
is in the mother's bed, right? So he's in the
Mhm.
mother's bed. So Peter Vincent goes to check on the mother, and he goes to check on her, and you have this whole Red Riding Hood thing. So now evil turns into this wolf, but before he turns into the wolf, he's dressed as Raggedy Ann in the mother's bed. And so then Peter Vincent goes to check on her, and it's not the mother, it's the evil who turns into a wolf. So you have that Red Riding Hood scene, and I just enjoyed that as well. Because again, when I first saw it, I didn't get that connection, but it was just enjoyable because like in the back of my mind and my subconscious, it was there, it was familiar. But then he turns into this kind of wolf. Love the red eyes, and I do like werewolf movies. I love the big werewolf monster costumes. I love it. But in this, him turning into a real wolf, I think was much better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if they had this like giant lumbering thing like try to make its way like out from the mom's doorway, it just wouldn't have had the same effect.
I don't think it
Like,
would have had the same effect, but I also think it would have taken away from the movie when normally that's what I love. I love those big monster effects. I love the big rubber suits, the transformations, like any of those monster films, werewolf films, I enjoy, but
Right.
somehow or other, I think it would have cheesed up this movie.
But in a way, we still kind of get that, which I'm sure you're going to get to in a second. We still kind of get the werewolf rubber monster suit in a way. After Peter deals with him.
Yeah, it's fine, but here I enjoy this. I really did. I liked having the real wolf. Thought it was great, and then obviously Peter overcomes him. He dies. He gets hit with the stair spindle there. Now he's dead. And again, we know it's him because he changes back. Let's see. Now we're here. And we're not seeing what I wanted to see. So this is the picture we have, but on the other side we have Billy. So these two here, they're showing the cross. They're pretty sure of themselves that they're going to stop him. But Billy's not a vampire; he's a familiar.
Yeah, and like it took me, I think, well into like I was a teenager watching this to realize, like, oh, that's his Renfield. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. No, I got it then, but I mean, I didn't know who Renfield was then. Like, I wasn't like I didn't know about any of the Dracula stuff until way later. But I got it that he was something like that. I didn't even understand the whole familiar thing at the time. I just got that he was like they were connected. He was his. It was almost I felt like it was his pet. Like maybe he would change him into a vampire one day if he did everything right. Like I had that thought when I was younger when I saw it, but I just didn't know it.
Right.
Yeah. So this was great. And then again, we get the transformation, which is cool. We get the rubber monster suit, which I don't have a picture of, which is great. We get the when he shoots him, up like 6 times.
Yeah.
7 times. He pulls out the revolver. I didn't expect that at all. And he starts oozing this like green blood is just pouring out of him like buckets. And I had never seen anything like that when I was that young. And so it was just cool, man.
Yeah, I think Billy is the grossest kill in the movie. Like even more than Evil Dead with the slow transformation back to being human. Like all that melting flesh and the slime and the dust. I was just like, oh my god! And then he just devolves into like a skeleton.
Well, everything about that
so
was great, though. Like you have today, they would have done all of that with CGI with computers, and it just doesn't come across the same. And I think this is probably one of the better ones. Over the years, like in the 80s and the 90s, that was pretty much the last of the rubber monster suits, the last of the practical special effects that we were getting. And this was at like the height of that. And the most of the people that were involved in this, they were like at the peak performance. They were, top players in the game. And this was no different. It was just a really, really enjoyable experience on film. And I absolutely love it. And I still think it holds up. Even though I know I'm getting practical effects, I enjoy them.
Yeah, I think next to some of the stuff that they did in Prince of Darkness, this has some of the best like practical effects when it comes to like, monsters getting got,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought this was really good. And then we have Amy, who's upstairs. She is being transformed because obviously Jerry wants her. And this was the thing. Even when I was a kid, I've never really cared for women with short hair, just my personal preference. And so this, I was like, obviously Brewster likes her. She's just not for me. But when I saw her with the long hair when she turns into a vampire, she has this long hair. Now you can't really tell here the way it's sitting in there, but like she has the long hair. I was like, damn, she's a knockout. And then she's got the whole vampire teeth. And then I was like, I guess that's what, you throw vampire teeth on a chick that I don't find that attractive. And I changed my tune very quickly.
Oh yeah, man. Like, I mean, look, the actress is great, but she's not my cuppa at all. But like when she traps him, I believe in the basement and she's like in the doorway.
Yeah, all day.
All day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. And I did like her with the long hair. And then so we get in here, but then the very beginning, that's all Brewster wanted was he wanted to get with her. She's willing to get with him. She's also gonna eat his face off. And now we have another transformation. So then we have, let's see, is this the right thing? Oh, yeah, here we go. So they pull the cross out on him, and at first, like Peter Vincent pulls the cross out, and he's like, "You got to have faith for it to work." It doesn't work right away. There's like a banter back and forth. He starts doing the transformation thing, and it's just great. It really is. You have a little bit of a fight going on here, and it lasts till morning. And then Jerry gets hurt a little bit, and then he has to run in safety into the coffin, but they're still able to go after him. And they bring the fight to the basement after he's in the coffin.
Yeah. It's a great example of escalation in screenwriting, because I think most movies today would just build up to whatever the final confrontation is, and then that's it. Whereas this happens in a series of stages. It's like the initial going into the house, then it's having to deal with Billy, then it's having to deal with Amy, and then it's having to deal with Jerry, but then Jerry retreats, and so you have to deal with Jerry and Amy again.
Yeah. No, and I really did like it. Like you said, the escalation, I think it worked. It's not just like one epic battle and then like the end is lackluster. It kind of builds up, and so it's enjoyable. At the same time, we don't even get a full transformation again. We're getting part of it. We're seeing part of it. He's definitely transforming, but we don't get the full thing till the end. And again, I think that worked on so many levels. And I don't know if the reason was the writing or if it just kind of logistically how they could make it work on film, but it was an enjoyable experience.
Yeah. You tell me like this, it was written in 3 weeks. I almost wonder if like that was baked into the design of the third act. Like, okay, we really have to figure out a way to creatively stretch out this third act, because all we have available to us is the house to shoot in. So how do we make that be the whole third act?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But either way, it worked out very, very well. So now they go in the basement, they're chasing him. And at that point, even though they're more safe, right? They think they're more safe because it's daytime, but now they're in the dark, they're in the basement. And I don't know if I'm going in the basement,
I'm not going down there, man.
Right? I don't know if I might I might come in with a bulldozer and just knock the house down. I don't know if I'm coming in there. I might burn the whole house down. That's what I'm probably going to do.
But it does show it does show Peter's growth, because like when they first walk in, and Jerry just throws Brewster over the side railing of the staircase. Peter just books it out of the house.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
And so that he goes from that in the span of about 20 minutes, from that to actually, mustering up the courage and the faith to go down into the basement, like says a lot about his character growth.
Oh, sure. And then, now they're in the basement, something I wouldn't have done, but you do see the character growth. So you're right on that. But then we see Amy, and again, the long hair. I'm a big fan. I do like her with the long hair.
It works.
Young boy me, you can see through the shirt a little bit. I was like,
Yep.
everything about the film I was just in. So to this day, I think this is one of the best vampire flicks. One of my favorites, and so many levels of this film. But this is the last scene. I don't have any of the other cool scenes of what we actually see, but they get Jerry. We see a full transformation now, and that's just a really, really cool design. But then they accidentally they realize that they can knock out the windows, and then they can bring the sunlight in to then give us burst into flames. And that's the scene there, which I'm pretty sure is not CGI. And I think it's painted in. I think it's definitely painted in. But it's a really, really cool scene. And again, with everything that we've gotten with practical effects, that little bit, it adds so much to it. Where if it was overdone, very frustrating. Because like you have to go back to something we didn't even talk about when Peter Vincent leaves the house after killing Evil Ed. I keep saying I want to see that movie now. Every time we see Evil Ed die, he goes over next door, and then the whole entire house is just fog is pouring out of it. And he's got the old brother kind of attitude. And so you see all this like really nice practical effects that work so well. And just that little bit when the explosion happens, he bursts into flames. You got the green stuff going on. It's all drawn in. It's enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. And even then you get like the various, transformations of Jerry. Cause like at one point, like his skeleton is like almost a giant bat. And then eventually it breaks down into just a standard like human skeleton. Like it's such a great way for Jerry to go out. And man, 80s villains died with a capital D. Like when they got taken out, they got taken out. And I miss that. I miss that from 80s movies.
Oh, they did. And then one thing I want to mention, I don't know if I mentioned it tonight. I know I told you about it earlier, but was Chris Sarandon, who played Jerry. Phenomenal in this movie. I really enjoyed his villain, but he did not want to do this role. Like everything about him, he kept saying he didn't want to do a vampire flick. He couldn't be a vampire. And then so he was reluctant doing this. And then the director, Tom Holland, who also he wrote it, he only directed it reluctantly to defend his work. Like people didn't believe in it. And so it's just like everything about it is like we almost didn't get the film the way we did because nobody wanted to be a part of it. Vincent Price was supposed to be in this. They wrote the Peter Vincent's character for Vincent Price. He was supposed to be in it, but he couldn't be because he was ill or something. And so you have all these things that technically, I guess maybe this movie shouldn't have been made because of all the hurdles they had to get through. So I'm glad they did. Because again, this is one of my favorite films I watch every October.
Yeah. I think Roddy is perfect in it.
For sure.
He both brings a level of sincerity and I could care less about anything you're telling me. And I love his like sprayed on gray hair. It's almost as bad as what's his name? Lloyd's in Back to the Future. Like,
oh yeah,
you're just like, dude, that you must have been breathing that in all day.
For sure. And so that was fun. That was my thing. Before you watch this today or yesterday, whenever you watch this, when was the last time you saw this
one? Probably I think last year or not last year, it would have been like Marchish when I got the 4K Steelbook. Yeah. But yeah, it's like Predator, man. It's at least a twice a year watch for me.
Oh, it's so good. So good. Yeah, I'm probably gonna, now that my kid is getting older, I don't think she's a little ready for this one yet, but I am gonna be watching it more often. In the past, I hadn't watched it as often because she's always around and she was a little bit young. She's still not, I don't want her to see the film, but I am going to watch it more often. I'll just tell her to get out of the room. Now let's dive into Nightmare on Elm Street. Now I watched this today. This is the first time I've seen it in quite a few years. Again, probably since my kid was born. My youngest was born. I used to watch it all the time. I used to watch it on a yearly basis, but it's one that my wife doesn't like because it actually gives her nightmares. And so like the amount of times I get to watch it, not that often. I do own it on Blu-ray, the very first one, but then like I said, very recently I had picked up this entire box set at the thrift store. And so I've been, and it had been a while since I've seen all of them. But so I've been revisiting all of them recently because we decided to do this. But this first one here I watched just today, just finished it today. Man, do I love it. I absolutely do. The second one I watched that the day before, and I was just like, I don't love that one. But and the third one, third one,
Uh-huh.
But the thing about it with all those, there's something to enjoy about them, like the practical effects, the story. There is some funness to do with most of those, so that's why I'm glad to have it. But this very first one, I think, is the best one. It is my absolute favorite, and it's why I had not owned any of the other ones on Blu-ray until I got this set.
Mhm.
And I don't necessarily think it's a perfect film, but it is one of my absolute favorite films. I love slashers. I saw this at a crazy early age. I was in kindergarten when I saw this, and it was all by accident. So I had a black and white TV in my room. I was told to go to
Mhm.
bed. I didn't want to go to sleep. I turned my TV on. I turned it, and so I remember standing up, watching this entire film, like at very low volume, just trying to listen to see if my mom was going to come catch me or whatever, and to hurry up and jump back in bed. I watched this entire film on like a school night, and I remember going to school talking about it, and like everyone, the teachers kept telling me to stop lying that my parents didn't let
Yeah.
me see this movie, and I was like,
Yeah.
no, no, I did. so I really enjoyed it from that time. It was the very first time I ever saw a slasher, which is my favorite horror genre. Then this was my very first experience with the final girl and having that whole trope. I never understood that until then. So this is obviously kindergarten, very early age. But even later on, when I was watching some of the horror movies, I didn't really grasp that horror girl, the final girl concept in the horror films until maybe I was like a teenager, and so
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So this to me was special. Obviously, the very first appearance of Johnny Depp. It was
Mhm.
his first film. Heather Langenkamp, she was great in this, and she was kind of cute back then.
Yep.
And recently, she's definitely much older, right? But
Oh,
recently,
yeah.
she has said she would revisit Nancy anytime. She says it's
Mhm.
to this day, it's one of her more favorite roles, and she thinks the character is so fun that she would jump at the chance to do it again. And I don't hate it. I don't hate it.
No, I love the first Nightmare, and yeah, likewise, Heather was 100% a childhood crush of mine. Um, I like and like even because we were talking before the show, like rewatching it, I only got about a third of the way through because of kid stuff. But
Mhm.
yeah, like just rewatching it for the first time in about 3 years, like right out the gate, man, I love that like blood red New Line logo, the old New Line logo.
Mhm.
I love that so much. But yeah, like it's the thing that jumped out at me almost immediately was you can tell what a fan of Hitchcock Wes Craven is because
Mhm.
this is the second time. Well, he would do it. I should say he would do it again later with Scream. This is the first example of him pulling the whole psycho thing with killing off like who you think is the lead at the start of the movie. um because we're introduced to the movie and the idea of Freddy through
Mhm.
Tina. We assume that Tina's the protagonist, and she gets done rotten, man.
Yeah, hold on. Let me bring her up. Hold on. Let's see. I had her
Yeah,
somewhere. Hold on. Yeah, you keep talking. I'm not interrupting you. I'm just trying to find. I had all these photos. I forgot to bring them up.
yeah, yeah. No, and like, uh, it's what's interesting to me is this is it almost feels like Wes was able to almost create a whole new style to his approach to filmmaking from movie to movie because like dealing with the subject of nightmares and dreams, the entire movie feels dreamlike to the point where when I was in college, I had a theory that the entire movie's a dream. Like nothing about it is set in reality.
Right.
Which would explain like the erratic behavior of all the adults in the movie. Um, and it would explain why like sometimes the dream logic bleeds over into when they're supposed to be awake.
It would
But like
explain the end.
it would explain the end.
Yeah.
Like and it's like what so yeah, like all the way through like even college, I was like, I think this whole movie is just a nightmare.
Mhm. And it
Uh
could be. I mean, I've never heard anybody else have that theory, but it makes sense. I mean, it really
yeah.
makes sense because then you have to like think of like you can look at it back then of like just a stupid dumb horror movie, overacting, all those tropes. Like, they're not that good, they're low budget. A lot of the actors, they're their first time, so they're not good actors. And so you look at like Heather Langenkamp when she's speaking to her mother, she like
Yeah.
slams her hand into the fridge, and she's like that has that weird overacting, and then the mother has that weird overacting. Again, it would lead into the fact that maybe the whole thing was a dream. And that's how they were
Maybe the
told
whole
to
thing.
talk and act, because it's not natural. And I've seen not all of them, but most of all the actors that are in this film, I've seen them in many other films, and they don't act like that. And so
Yeah.
it does lean into that theory, which is kind of cool. I've never even thought of it before like that, but it makes sense. Makes sense.
Maybe.
But yeah, so we have this scene like you were talking about. So she's running through in the very beginning. So we have her. The very first thing, again, we don't see all of Freddy. We see part of Freddy, which is great. And I like holding off on the monster. But in this film, we do see Freddy pretty early, which I did not hate, because that's where I got sucked into this film, being so young when I watched it. But yeah, we have her running through the halls. We have her, in the dream fighting Freddy. That's kind of cool. Then we have this, and we show like all of the bad, right? And then we have like something that there's nothing more innocent than like, little girls in a white dress, like almost like they're ready to go to Sunday school, right? Singing, the Freddy song, the 1, 2. It's just a nice scene. Because it goes through, because it goes from pure evil to pure innocent.
Exactly.
But then we have this scene. So then all the teenagers' parents are gone. They're going to the house. They're doing stuff they're not supposed to be. Johnny Depp calls his mom and like plays that stuff on the radio, showing, lying, saying that, he's at near the airport. He's loving it at his aunt's house or whatever, when he's clearly not there. And
with the tape deck. That was great.
Yeah, it was a great scene, because as a kid, like, who doesn't want to like lie to their parents and get away with something they're not supposed to be doing, right? It's just it was an intriguing way to do it, right?
Yeah.
But then we have this scene here. Here are our two first victims, basically, and we see them together, which again it foreshadows that they're the first two. But then this is very shortly before we get our real first glimpse of Freddy, and. We have this here. This is redone in the Frighteners, but it was done here so much better, because this practical effect. In the Frighteners, it was early CGI, and it's still off-putting. But I love that movie as well. But this here, this I think this was the first time anything like this had been done. Maybe it hasn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But it was the first time I had ever seen anything like this, where the ghost entity, obviously Freddy, is pushing through the wall. And it's just really nice effect. I enjoyed that one.
And it was probably super cheap to film. Like,
yeah,
that's my thing with like, the studios shying away with practical effects. It's like, I understand CGI is just how studio execs think, but you look at this and it looks gorgeous. And it's like, if you could do this for whatever, like the rubber,
somebody behind a sheet.
Yeah. Like
literally.
It probably costs less than $100. Like,
somebody behind a sheet is all it is. That's all it is. But it's so good. It's so good. I enjoy that. So we see that, obviously trying to get into her dreams. It's something interesting. But here we go. And again, this again, young teenage me feeds all of my love and my wants. So a chick with in a button-down shirt with legs hanging out, big fan, always have been, and this is probably the reason. So we see her in the alley, and in my real life experience as a kid, I never even picked up on this, but in my real life experience, I don't know any woman that I have ever met in my entire real life that would ever go outside at that time of night to take the trash out. Not that they wouldn't go out like that. They wouldn't dress like that. That has nothing to do with it. They would. The thing is, they would go out that time of night because of spiders, mice, snakes, like, the creepy crawly stuff. And then on top of like anything spooky coming around the corner, there's like, once it's dark, like every woman I've ever known will not go outside like that or at all. Like, and so the fact that not only is she outside, but then she investigates the noise. I'm just like, no.
Yeah, that's immediately when every woman I've ever met would turn and walk back into the house.
Oh, 100%. They'll run in the house and then tell you to go investigate. Yes.
Right. Right.
But then we see Freddy for the first time. We have this scene. Now, this one is, we don't see a full Freddy, but we see his face. He is definitely burned. He is one bad looking dude, right? And we see the claws on his hand, which is obviously iconic to Freddy. You know, if you've been alive for more than 5 years, you have seen this at some point in your life. Like it's
Right.
everywhere. It's I think not overused, but it is definitely part of pop culture since the time that we were little. But this right here, first time we get to see it, but then it goes right into him cutting his fingers off to really intimidate her and showing her what's up.
Right.
Like
Right.
the whole thing is this wild dream world. So the fact that he very first thing, he doesn't even threaten her, he doesn't say anything, he just cuts his fingers off. It's great.
Yeah, man. To real quick go back to what you were saying about the sequels having less and less impact. I love sequels to horror movies, like as schlocky as they get.
Yeah.
But I think the diminished returns factor applies the most to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because you just can't. I don't think you can replicate the simple level of effective creativity that Wes Craven brought to this whole thing. I think they started trying to escalate too much, and then Freddy just kind of becomes comical almost. You know, like his introduction is literally him cutting off his fingers just to show that nothing in this world matters and that he's in complete control.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, you definitely get that there. And you're right. So it did lean into the comical. And I don't mind horror comedies, right? But this very first movie was not really a horror comedy, even though there's things to laugh at in it. But in obviously, we've talked about before, but in Scream, Wes Craven makes it a point where Drew Barrymore's character says that Freddy was great, but only the first one. The rest of them sucked, right? You know, says that line. So he obviously wrote that in there, and it's truly how he felt. He did this one and not the rest. Like, he lost the rights or whatever. However that whole thing works with him signing the contracts and getting this movie made. He got to do the first one. The rest was not really under his control.
Right.
So I understand that one, but you can see it where this is an enjoyable film. And yes, you're right. There are things to enjoy about the sequels, but this is the superior version, and the rest don't even hold up.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love 3 and I love parts of 4, but the first is clearly the best of the whole thing.
Yeah, and we have someone in the chat. Steve Hales says, Freddy and Jason mostly kill stupid people who make bad decisions. Well, that's something to talk about, because I noticed, just joking around, like if I go, chase my daughter, right? Like we're playing, I chase her up the stairs. She does the same thing that everybody in a horror movie does, like all the same tropes. Like she drops to the ground. She like starts crawling to her room. She like freezes. She runs up the stairs where there's no escape. Like all the things that people complain about, like these stupid people do to get killed. I said, that's what my 6-year-old does when I'm just playing, right? So in real life, it's the same. But yeah, stupid people make stupid decisions, they get killed. But I do enjoy these films always. So we see this was great. And this right here, this was amazing to me when I first saw it. Again, I was like in kindergarten when I saw this thing. So I had never seen anything like this. Obviously, they finished having sex. They're supposed to be like high school teenagers. So again, it fits a lot of fantasies, especially being young. Obviously, in kindergarten, that wasn't my fantasy, but like I got what was going on. But then she dies, like she gets killed. Like Freddy's getting her, and he's just sitting there lost. Really, really cool effect. I don't know if they did the flipping of the upside down. I don't know exactly how they did it. Because he's obviously in the scene too. I don't know if they added him in, but it didn't. He doesn't look like he's cut in. Where some of those earlier '80s films, when they add somebody to the scene, they kind of look cut out.
Yeah, that superimposed look.
Yeah, it's a smooth image, and so I don't know exactly how they did this scene, but it's really cool. And obviously, she's on the ceiling. She's being murdered. We don't see Freddy at all, except for she sees him. When we see her under the covers, we see him for a moment, but up in here, like she's just being slashed up, and he's watching the entire thing in complete shock. Cops show up and they think he murdered her. Now, on top of all this, there's a ridiculous amount of blood. Nowhere near as much as the next one, but this one here, there's a ton of blood, and I had never seen anything like that either. So again, slasher films, I'm all in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. Like I was saying earlier, like she gets done rotten. Like they all get it pretty bad throughout this movie, but yeah, like I think it was almost like a mission statement from Wes Craven to be like, no, this is what you can expect with this movie.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And again, a cool effect. So now Heather, she's in school. She says she's going to take a nap in study hall. She does take a nap in study hall. She falls asleep. And this is what we get.
There we go.
So
Yep.
this, and it's still enjoyable. I love this part because like you don't see any of the wires. You don't see anything. Her legs, she's just being dragged.
Yeah.
You know, and again, something about this scene, I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's very effective. There, yeah,
And again, like
yeah, man.
we said, it's not a horror comedy, but there are things to laugh at in the film, and there's one of
Right.
them. So again, we're not seeing a full Freddy again. We got a glimpse of him in the alley, that first little glimpse, and he cuts his finger off, but we're not like bombarded with it. I think like this entire film, he's on screen for like 5 or 10 minutes. He's not on screen for very long of the entire film. And so like adding something like this in, it gives you the sweater thing. It's just humorous, enjoyable. It's enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think most of that screen time is in the final third of the movie. So
Oh yeah. Yeah,
it really is the shark from Jaw territory with this whole movie.
it's
Of like, you
perfect.
just never see him.
No. Again, you have this glimpse here, like through the locker doors. Cool.
Yeah.
Then I know this scene, but this is right before she burns her arm to then wake up in the study hall, and she wakes up screaming.
Right.
Everyone thinks she's nuts, and it's not the boy who cried wolf, but everyone thinks she's crazy.
Yeah,
To the point
of
where
course.
she starts explaining it to her parents, and then her parents like start to realize it, and maybe she's telling the truth because obviously the sweater, the hat, all that jazz, and even in that scene, I don't know if we even have a picture of that, but the scene in the cemetery when she starts explaining the guy in her dream, the guy who killed him, to the parents, like there's a way that they clipped it, which I think would have been better if they clipped it differently. So all of a sudden, like
Okay.
she says there was a guy with a hat and a burned face. He said there was a burned up guy with a hat. And then instantly the dad's like shock face, like, oh, he knows what's going on. But then she says with the green and red striped sweater, and then it switches to the mom's face. And then she says with knife fingers. And so if they had just pushed that a little bit further and showed the dad's face after she says sweater, and then the mom's face after she says the knife fingers, I think it would have been a more satisfying scene because anybody, I had a dream, and the guy in my dream had a hat and was on fire. He was burned up. Should not allude, like those parents really probably wouldn't have light bulbed something that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that they burned up this dude,
Sure.
Yeah, that was my only thing, but yeah, that was coming up. But again, enjoyable. And now this scene, it's extremely iconic, and I probably know I don't know anybody who's seen the scene, like my wife, any girl I've ever known that has seen this scene will not take a bath with that door locked. For that reason, like, I got help. I need help. I got to get out. But it's always been a cool scene. Obviously, I enjoy this. I had an opportunity to buy this autograph, but I couldn't verify that it was real, and it was extremely pricey, so I didn't. But this one is this exact same image is something I would love this autograph because it's such an incredible scene, and then I can get the dual autograph. I can get both of them.
Yeah. For every lady I've ever watched this movie with, this falls into the Evil Dead tree territory of like it just creeps them out.
Yeah. No, but big fan.
Yeah.
Then we have the scene where she's being dragged under the water, a really cool effect in the bathtub, and I'm pretty sure. That scene, I'm pretty sure like they didn't use a stunt double. I'm pretty sure it was her like being really pulled down, and it was like water. But then we have the scene. So this whole bathtub and everything was just over a giant tank. It was just a simple, easy effect, but it was so good. And at the time when I saw it, I had never seen anything like it. And just great. And again, going back to practical effects, just incredible, and just the ingenuity, the thought process, like Wes Craven has this idea, says he writes this, he says, hey, the hand's going to come out of the bathtub. And they're like, how are we going to do that? And it's simple. It's simple. But again, now you can't do that today. It's just wild.
I know, man. I know. There's some great stuff going on in modern films, especially like in the indie scene and the horror scene. But by and large, just the creative drive, I think, has been sucked out of so much from the mainstream.
Oh yeah, definitely. So then this was another cool effect. I didn't get the actual picture of the effect, but we've seen it in other places. Obviously, we see it in T2, but differently.
Right.
So he walks through the bars, and it was a lot smoother. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice transition, a simple effect, old Hollywood, something they've been doing for a long time. But again, when I first saw this, it was the first time I've seen anything like it, and I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah, no, same thing. Like you see this as a kid, and you're like, oh, you're like, oh, there is no way to get away from this dude.
No, done. So we have this scene. That was the other scene. And somehow that picture got in a different place. So then she's yelling at Johnny, and she was mad at him she fell asleep. Pretty sure that's the scene. She fell asleep. He was supposed to stay awake and then wake her up if she started to really have a nightmare. And he fell asleep too. So then her nightmare was a little more than she wanted. So she's yelling at him for that. This scene here, she goes to the sleep clinic. And so then the mom's like really, really worried about her. She thinks the whole thing's like just in her head. She takes her to sleep clinic. Another interesting scene. This one has always taken me out of the movie. I don't know why. Like I always just assume that the movie is like in suburbs somewhere, right? And then we have this scene here with palm trees. And so it's like it almost feels like small town USA in the suburbs, or like maybe in Connecticut somewhere. But then this one scene, we have palm trees, and I'm like, we're not.
You're like, oh, it's LA. Okay.
Yeah. We're not where we're supposed to be. And I think that bridge has been done in like a bunch of films too. It looks, of course, yeah. So there's that whole thing. So yeah, this scene always takes me out of it, and not for the acting, not what they're talking about, nothing about it. It's literally the palm trees and that whole image. Just it feels out of place.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes Halloween like such an impressive feat, because they managed to make California pass for the Midwest.
True, and they did a really good job in that one. Now this one here, I always enjoy it because phone acting for me is something we grew up watching. And most of us just didn't even realize that we just watched it, enjoyed it, was whatever. And now that you have cell phones, this is just a lost art, I think. It plays off differently with the cell phone and everything. So, and not everybody was good at it. And this scene I thought was very well. Obviously, they're looking at each other across the way. They're both on a phone, but in real life, they're talking to themselves. They're not talking to anybody. And so I just thought it was done very well. I enjoyed this scene. And then obviously the very next scene, I think I have the picture of that. No, I don't. Oh, darn. Here it is. Yeah. So the very next scene, she's dreaming and the phone, licks her face. So it's just a interesting thing. Then we have Johnny, which I always thought this was a little crazy too. Like I get the TV small, but at the time, like having a TV this size in your room in the 80s was pretty cool. You probably had a lot of money. Very rarely did anybody that I grew up with had more than one television in the house. The only reason I did was because my TV was being thrown away. It was an old black and white TV, and it was given to me because somebody was throwing it in the trash. And that's
Same thing, man.
I had one when I was a kid, and it was black and white. So my mom didn't want it. That was the only reason I got it. If it was a color television somehow, my mom would have had that in her bedroom.
Same thing.
Yeah. So the fact that he put the TV on the bed, like I get it works for the scene, because then we see that he's watching television. There's that. It's a little bit more entertaining. It's not boring. It's the very same thing of like in the Star Wars films where they have a very boring scene where it's just people talking, but then in the background behind them, you see out the window all the ships and everything flying by to give you that kind of motion. It does a very similar thing here, where it's not a static, boring image of him just staring at nothing. We see that he's watching the television. So it's a simple thing, but at the same time, I keep going, like my kid brain goes, why is the TV on the bed?
I get it. Yeah. I had an old black and white TV that we had in the basement, and the only reason they were getting rid of the basement one was because they got an older color TV, and
Mhm.
so I got to have that old black and white in my room. But like the thought of like I'm just gonna put this thing on my bed, never, never. Like
Never.
I wouldn't want to risk it falling off and breaking.
Oh,
Uh,
100%, right?
so yeah, like this is purely just visual storytelling. Like we need that TV on the bed to show something bad later on.
Yeah. Then we have that, we saw that, and then this. So then Johnny goes to sleep and he gets
The shot.
murdered, right? And
Yeah.
so this is his very first movie. This is not before, like, nobody knew who Johnny Depp was at the time. Like, I don't know if he was doing that TV show around the time this movie came out, but I do know this is his first movie.
Mhm.
He gets straight up killed. He gets sucked through this bed, and then another cool effect, which obviously is just a simple upside down room. They film the camera upside down, and so they just dump
Yep.
the liquid through the hole. But it just looks so good on film. I really enjoy this. It was just everything about it, and then they even tilt the room a little bit because towards the end of this scene, the blood is like going at an angle, as it's hitting the floor. It's just kind of cool. Again, just really imaginative, and I enjoy this. But there's way more blood than there should be. But
Yep.
again, it's why we love these films. And for a slasher, this is great. Again, we don't see the death. We see him getting sucked in and then the blood pouring out. To leave more to the imagination, I think, is
Mhm.
why this film wins for me. There's so many films I've seen where you see every single kill, you see every single like gore and blood, you see it all. This you didn't see. He got
Right.
sucked through the bed into the dream world, and then the blood came out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that Raimi flair of like just throw all the blood. Just give me all the blood and just throw it all down the hole.
Yeah. And then, so a lot more happens. The dad doesn't believe her. It's starting to happen. But now this scene, I don't know why we don't have anything after that. I thought I had all the pictures, but apparently I don't.
Okay.
We have this scene here. So the mom's an alcoholic. We've been dealing with that through the entire film. She kind of doesn't care, but at the same time, she puts bars on the windows. She locks the daughter in. She can't get out. But then
Mhm.
she decides she's going to bring Freddie back into the real world, and then she wants her dad to help him, to arrest him or kill him or whatever, just to save the day. But Freddie
Yeah.
comes through, and then he literally jumps on the mother while on fire, and then she's on fire. They're dying. The dad, very kind of nonchalant, like not, not, the reaction you'd expect that his wife is possibly dying or on fire,
Yeah.
puts the
Yeah.
blanket out, and then he watches this. They both watch this scene where she just kind of all on fire, dead, gets
Mhm.
sucked into the bed, and then the bed is like normal and then disappears. Now, Heather reacts, or Nancy in the movie, she reacts, she throws herself on the bed, yelling, "Mom." But then the husband is just kind of like, whatever. Like he's in shock, definitely, but there's not a lot of reaction one way or another.
And this is what I'm saying. Like like the whole movie just kind of operates on dream logic.
Yeah. And then this is the end of the movie. We flash back to the scene of the innocence, which is just great because we had
Mhm.
again all that evil. So this is just showing you pure innocence, almost tricking your mind.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be way earlier in the thing. This was a cool scene. We should talk about this earlier. And so this again, practical effects. He's being dragged out by his own veins and tendons.
Yep. Yep.
And then walking around like a puppet. That was
Yeah.
a really, really cool scene. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. I must have not had these in the. I thought I had them in order, so they must have been labeled something. And when I clicked
Sure.
organize, it probably messed it up.
Yeah.
But then
It
again,
happens.
yeah. So then we happen at the very end of the movie. I didn't have any photos from that. I tried to get them, but it was kind of cool. So then you have where your theory of the dream theory kind of really plays in, and I feel that you're probably right. A lot more of that overacting between the mother and the daughter. She's now acting a little differently, and then brags how she's just going to quit drinking because she feels so great. And so
Right.
I already had this like there's something wrong here. But then they
Right.
get in the car. They're all going to go to school. But then the car turns into the Freddy car, so it's all red, and the top has the green and red striped sweater top. It's just kind of really cool. They get locked in, and it drives off, and then the mother gets sucked through the door then the whole thing just ends like that. And it's really enjoyable. And I know a lot of people that aren't huge horror fans don't love the ending because to them it's not satisfying. There's no answer. To me,
Mhm.
it's a dream. There's more. There's more. I mean, like I never had that theory that you had, which it really does make sense. But there's going to be more to this world, and I enjoy that. And so for me, the ending has always been great.
Yeah, the ending of the first Nightmare is one of my favorite horror movie endings of all time.
Yeah.
If nothing then for just the visual of like the poor mom just being ripped through
Sucked
that
through the
like
door.
tiny
Yeah, the little
opening.
tiny hole. Yeah.
It's so great, man.
Well, she was kind of a jerk through the whole movie. She's kind of mean. She's an alcoholic. Good.
Yep.
Good Freddie got her. That's kind of my
Yep.
attitude. But now, would you show up your version of the movie again and compare it to this?
Yeah, this
Yeah,
garbage.
like this is the original movie poster. And again, I don't know who did this one, but again, it could have been Drew Struzan. I don't know, but it's amazing. It's really, really good.
Mhm.
Your version, what you got there, it's just boring. I don't understand, especially if this exists. Like that right there is not going to make, unless they have to pay every time they print that and they make a new version, they have to pay the original artist some money and they're just trying
Right.
to cheap out. I don't
Yeah.
know, but that right there as a collector, when they put that on Blu-ray, there's no reason that that original artwork should not have been on that. Even
Yeah.
though it's a collection, you have all the movies in there, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
even though it's a collection, like, why didn't we get something like this? Like, why don't you get something a little bit more, you know, entertaining? That was very, very boring. And that's actually why I never picked up that version in the first place. I was tempted at the time because I wanted all the films, but I held out, and I'm glad I found the version I had. But yeah, that one really just wasn't a fan. Wasn't a fan at all.
Yeah,
But do you like the movie?
I wasn't a fan either, and I went out of my way not to buy it, just figuring at some point that there would be a better version.
Mhm.
And like I've had this thing for like I think 4 years now, and there's still no better version. Like this is it. So like I think I saw it on Hamilton Book for clearance with like this little guy
Mhm.
for like $8, and I'm like, all right, I'll take it for that. Just so that I can have the movies. Uh but yeah, like the second a nicer version of this comes along, like if Scream Factory like ever does like a 4K remaster of the whole line, like Friday the 13th style, like this is going right out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a fan. But with that, you got anything else?
No,
wrap
I'm
it up?
good, man.
All right, yeah, guys. Everybody, thanks for hanging out. This was a little long today. I didn't expect it to be this long. So next week, I think we should only do one movie. Should
Let's
only
do one movie.
Keep it to an hour. But then, yeah, I think that's good. But I did have fun doing this. So this is going to be what we're going to do from now on. We're going to do this version, and once a month, we're going to do a movie, and maybe not even once a month. Definitely doing it for Halloween. Definitely doing it for Christmas. After that,
Mhm.
we might just stick to this. I'm really enjoying this. But thanks for hanging out. Catch you guys next time. And Monday, we haven't picked the movie yet, but it will be a horror movie. I'll catch you guys
Yeah.
next.
Later.
Who hired you?
To go now, goodbye.